Arc 6, The Corridor of Memories. Chapter 69, The Absurd Iron Hammer of the Sword. Gulping down those words he had heard, he required several seconds to chew their implication. Subaru, Reed is, Roy Alford. Upon the report betraying his expectations, Subaru's thoughts were disturbed into a shape unlike the anguish he had taken over. The pain and suffering he had arbitrarily taken from his comrades, due to that negativity his mind was working slowly, but this was a situation where even that couldn't be used as scapegoat. Taking some time for the moment with his brain seemingly melting out of his ears, he found his thoughts to be endless. In front of him, the majestic figure standing boldly about whom this revelation had been made, the red-haired swordsman, unmistakably the existence who was the biggest nuisance in this Pleiades watchtower, Reed Istria, all whilst staring at him. Subaru whispered. Julius, who had readied his night sword on his side, his expression possessed no signs of falsehood whilst he focused his eyes on Reed. He was not a person with the personality to make such unfunny jokes in a gambling room where it was all a matter of life and death in the first place. That was the commentary on Julius by Subaru, who had once forgotten everything, and abiding by that notion the one in question remained fully serious. Because it meant that Julius' remarks, who possessed that conviction, were certain truth. Subaru, if Reed is gluttony, then that means. Reed was one of the obstacles that existed in the watchtower, however, stood at an ambiguous position when it came to demarcation as an ally or enemy. But if his existence were to explicitly be one of those who were distinctly the enemies, then. Subaru, so that's why you were. Again and again, so persistently. Reed, hey, just wait, you. That's a pretty boring misunderstanding, you know. Subaru, eh? Reed, it ain't a joke, you. Hey, you. You saying that I'm talking the form of that unrelated idiot, don't go 'bout trustin' that boring conclusion, you. Hearing Subaru's trembling voice, Reed distorted his cheeks with seemingly painful displeasure. Subaru was unable to comprehend the meaning of that reaction. The Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, Roy Alford, was manifesting in the form of Reed. Subaru, who had just previously seen the transformations of Louis Arnab, had reached that extremely respectable conclusion. The authority of gluttony of extorting the shape, form and combat power of the opponent, the result of which was the Reed before them. However, Reed's mood turned worse, quite frankly, at that conclusion. The cause of that seemed to be, instead of the behavior of a coward hiding his true identity without knowing when to give, something much more simple like the displeasure of a child upon being teased. The real meaning of that was, Reed, ain't it obvious that I'd be me? Because that'll never change, I'm standing here. Do you disagree? Are you saying I'm wrong? Touching the eye patch on his left eye whilst baring his sharp fangs, Reed declared towards Subaru. Receiving that, Subaru inhaled and furrowed his eyebrows, reading deeply into his words. And noticing a certain possibility, he took a short breath. Subaru, it can't be, Julius. Julius, likely, what you are imagining is correct. While keeping his line of sight maintained towards Reed, Julius pulled in his jaw upon Subaru's hoarse voice. The good-looking man rubbed his cheek stained by his own blood with his shoulder and whilst continuing to erase that bloodstain. Julius, my wording earlier was at fault. Let me correct it. In front of our eyes, that flesh body belongs to Roy Alford. However, that spirit is different. Subaru, spirit. Julius, Roy Alford, ate the memories of Reed Istria and had the control over his own spirit stolen by those memories. Henceforth he, without any restrictions, descended from the second layer and is now here. Subaru found himself dumbfounded in response to Julius affirming the absurd possibility he had thought of. Subaru wondered how something like that was even possible. No, each one aside from Subaru, Amelia, Beatrice, and even Ram, all of them widened their eyes together. Certainly, everything's reasoning was logical with Julius' explanation. Originally, as the trial taker of the trial in Pleiades watchtower, Reed Istria was not supposed to be able to leave the second layer, but he started wandering about in the tower making an expression as if he owned the whole place, the reality behind that. In the worlds he had continued to repeatedly witness, Subaru had been confused in the mayhem which brought the end of the tower. Within those, he himself had not been able to attain freedom but had taken advantage of the actions of gluttony and had acquired freedom. Yes, that's right. With that, all of the baffling situations surrounding Reed made sense. However, he was unable to shut his hanging jaw, for this exceeded norms far too much. Beatrice, got dragged along by the memories and lost sight of the true self, is what it would mean, I suppose. Ram, simply put, it must mean that the one with the stronger self won and remained. In terms of self-principles, one chased away the other. Though a bit late compared to Subaru, Beatrice and Ram arrived at the same conclusion. An unstructured way of speaking, but Ram's words expressed the truth with frankness. Subaru, but I have a doubt too. That was why the Eaton Reed's existence had not disappeared from everyone's memories. Till now, the ones who had fallen victim to gluttony aside from Subaru, Rem, and Julius had their existences erased from the memories of all people, is how it seemed. The truth is, in the previous loop, the existence of Amelia disappearing from the memories of Ram and the rest was something Subaru could attest to. If so, then the same thing not happening to Reed was. Julius, principally, what gluttony had eaten was not Reed's name, but at most his memories, is what that would mean. It is not possible to eat both the name and memories of a dead person. That is what Roy Alford had asserted. Subaru, Huck. Did you witness the scene of Reed getting eaten? Sensing Subaru's doubt, Julius responded with a single eye open. He answered with a short yes, looking at the crumbled wall he himself had passed through. Julius, when I went to the second layer in accordance with your instructions, you see. Timely enough, that was when Roy Alford and Reed were having negotiations. Negotiation, to label it as that would be suspicious in itself, though. Subaru, what's suspicious about that? Julius, because Reed was making no effort for resistance. Perhaps gluttony, for some reason, may have been subjected to the trial. That is why he, the trial taker, was unable to attack the opponent. Reed, ha! That's about half correct and half incorrect. Upon Julius stating that conjecture, none other than Reed called a halt to it. While crackling his thick neck bones, he had his nails touch the pit of his stomach. Reed, certainly, no way they were gonna be participants for the trial, but had I thought of doing it then I would have done it, you know? If I did that then I won't be here right now, ain't that so? Julius, you have attained the opponent's self. Are you saying that you already possessed confidence in that? Reed, just actin' as if focusing on only the strong parts is something I won't allow. Placin' everything one side has en gamblin' it all's what's interestin'. Though, that was something that Midget didn't understand. Regardless of the truth of him having obtained that physical body, whatever may have been the interests of gluttony who had been affected by that sequence of events, Reed declared pertaining to Roy with terrible indifference, whom he had confronted. Merely, the fact is that the reality in front of their eyes was the truth. The self of Roy Alford had been painted out by the monster known as Reed Estrella. Reed, if you want to eat and taste me then you gotta have the stomach large enough to fit me in. He didn't have that. That's why I bit and tore apart the stomach. That's all there's to it. Subaru, that's all there's to it, you say? Aside from his bearing nausea and the sense of abrasion of his mind and body, Subaru felt his head starting to hurt. In other words, if what happened in Reed's body was to be said straightforwardly then. Subaru, revived. Resurrected from the dead, is that what this is about? Julius, in terms of results, you could say that. Above all, a situation where it is possible to meddle with the memories of a dead person, and the existence who wielded that ability being encountered for the first time and then subsequently arriving into existence, it is a series of events akin to miracles. Subaru, miracles. A life who was supposed to have vanished 400 years ago, to witness the moment of it being resurrected like this, Julius might have stated it to be the embodiment of an ironical miracle regardless of his intent to call it that way. Although, he did not intend to state the reality of his resurrection alongside that as well. Amelia, can I ask one thing? Reed, Abruptly, when all of the happenings were being arranged into order, the one to raise her voice like that was Amelia. Here after the encounter with Reed, Amelia had kept her mouth shut so that the topic of discussion may not get diverted. Seeing the discussion reach a point where it could halt, she turned her amethyst eyes towards Reed. And Amelia, you have. Reed has been revived, right? With that you become able to leave that place, that's something I really congratulate you for. Reed, thanks. With this I can teach ya all sorts of stuff at a proper place, fiercely frizzlin'. Let's have drinks tonight, you. Aside from that. Hey we'll do stuff as I teach ya. Amelia? Are you inviting me to go out with you? But, I have only gone into a date with Puck and Subaru, so, I'm sorry. Also, though it would make for an exchange Subaru would never want to miss out on, getting caught on by Amelia's comment on her date was something Subaru currently had no time to spare for. Keeping those innermost thoughts of Subaru's for some other occasion, Amelia repositioned Subaru's body she was carrying on her shoulders. Amelia, even though you have become free, can't you stop being in our way? In case you don't know, we are really busy right now. Reed, don't ya make me say it, fiercely frizzlin'. I more or less got grasp on what's happenin' here. After all, the tiny brat of this body was unusually well informed. I hate it. I really don't like it. As if throwing up, Reed annoyingly gripped to his guts. It seemed not merely resurrection, but Reed also had the ability to read the memories of Roy Alford. In other words, he apparently even had the power to catch a glimpse of an edge of the authority of gluttony. Above all, it seemed as if it was something he aesthetically found strongly, terribly repulsive. Reed, he didn't have a standpoint of his own, that's why he got himself involved in such stupid shit. He's an irredeemable kid. Though he ended up disappearing cause he was doing it without knowing his position, it's gotta be a natural reward. Subaru, why talk about only this place? If you're free, then how about you go conquer the world and the vast oceans? I really feel like you're just delaying the problem, if that's the case. Reed, you, don't just start preparing to run away. As it is, a situation where you're being carried on the shoulders of a woman, it's so pathetic it'd be better to die. Do you want to be coated with embarrassment? Subaru's venture to avoid battle and having the situation ameliorate ended with a failure. Perhaps, even the ones other than Subaru may have failed to understand what he had proposed just now as well. In the end, even if Reed were to gain freedom, he intended to respect his role as the trial taker. Otherwise, not being particular about his title of the trial taker, he simply would not allow for an opponent, whom he had decided to cross swords with, to escape. At any rate, Emilia, is that so? If you won't move aside, then there's no choice. With a long sigh congested with nuance of it being unfortunate, the reply sufficiently suggested Emilia's decision to attack Reed. Emilia, I'm sorry. Those words were directed, not at the confronting Reed, but at Subaru, who was atop her shoulders, and he was a second late for noticing that. Because after a single second, Subaru's body had been brought down from Emilia's shoulders and gently handed over to Beatrice, who was beside them. In but an instant, crossing the aisle with the speed as that of a bullet, Emilia slammed an ice sword into Reed. The atmosphere gave rise to a high-pitched sound, yielding forth frost, and the beautiful yet cruel blade of ice fluttered through the aisle as it was enshrouded in the erupted smoke. In any case, the attack with no hesitation whatsoever, aiming for a fatal wound. Once Emilia had decided to act upon, there was no faltering in her then. That was something clearly understood after all of the battles till now. Emilia, hook. The slash attack Subaru's eyes finally caught up to, the strike which was almost like an ambush. Reed easily received it using his arm outside of the breast pocket of his casual dress with the chopsticks he was holding in his hand. This was not the first time seeing Reed wield chopsticks as his special weapon. However, it was not something which could be gotten used to even after seeing it on multiple occasions. Abnormalities were abnormalities, there lay change in that recognition. Subaru, he. Emilia-chan. Beatrice, as Subaru. Don't push yourself, in fact. Stay put, I suppose. Subaru shouted at Reed's abnormal swordsmanship, feeling perturbed about Emilia's safety. Appealing to Subaru to take care of himself was Beatrice, whom Emilia had suddenly foregone and entrusted his body to. Being supported by her petite frame while kneeling down onto the aisle, Subaru pushed his eyes open. Meanwhile, Emilia renewed her arms, which had been smashed, or rather, slashed by the chopsticks, and continued the performance of her swords dance like a fairy within sparkling diamond dust. Easily brushing that away, Reed laughed with a hook, like a shark. Reed, ha! Just as expected, you got it quickly, fiercely frizzlin'. But, you, don't you know? Your trial is already over, you know? Emilia, if that's so. Then pass everyone else too. Reed, hey, the hell kind of reasonin' makes you say that I ain't got any reason to be doing that. Emilia, I request you. Reed, there ain't anything cute in beggin' like that. For now, take off your clothes, you. Though she had been making a serious expression, Emilia's entreaty did not wield anything to Reed's ears. Identical to the first strike, Reed warded it away, chased it away the subsequent strikes using vivid techniques of chopsticks, barely conceivable. Subaru was unable to close his mouth hanging open before that abnormal swordsmanship. Of course, Reed's irrefutable mastery was not something unknown. However, even Emilia had not drawn a step back against even the enemies of gluttony and the titanic scorpion. When compared to such a variety of warriors, she had shown overwhelming capacity. At the very least, even 100 of Subaru would not be able to oppose Emilia. For Reed, that was, quite literally, a child's play. Emilia's offense and defense, jaded the spirit of it being a do-or-die situation, was not but the play of an unskilled child for Reed. Subsequently, Emilia, after a mere few exchanges, was unable to reach through and experience defeat. The difference in their ability was so immense that even the untrained eyes could identify that. However, Ram, the reason to abstain from using full force? That should be quite simple. Reed, Ram, because you will face an unsightly defeat here at the hands of Ram and the others. Interrupting the battlefield with a petite frame pronounced Ram, positioned behind Reed. And caught hold of that back of Reed's. That alone was more than worthy of admiring, but Ram's fearsomeness was not the end of it. Emilia attacked without any relent against the opponent Reed Estrella. Ram matched the timing with her, who had left her battle style upon her senses, with godly intuition. Precisely this which Subaru had not been able to read at all, was Emilia's initial surprise attack movements that suggested the question whether he had really managed to read them, and the truth was that they were movements which gave the impression of possibly already having gotten read. The very next instant, Ram's unleashed fist stabbed into the side of Reed's casual dress. At the moment of the impact, with the sound of the flesh and bones creaking, Ram's white fist's piercing strength penetrated through Reed's internal organs and the aisle was split open by the bottom of Reed's feet, who continued standing his ground. Subaru, it reached through. Hook. Looking at that, Subaru thoughtlessly hugged Beatrice tightly. He wanted to cheer, but he was unable to voice anything further. Instead of that, he felt his body heat up as if his blood was boiling. Because that was, as far as Subaru knew, the first time Reed had taken damage without it even being a matter of super luck. Ram, ha, aaa. The unimaginably powerful fists fired from her slender arms were hammered into Reed as if a storm. Reed received that with his defenseless lower body, and retreated. It was not as if he lacked all defense. Even for blocking Ram's attacks, his two chopsticks were being used to block Emilia's fierce attack, so he merely lacked the defense to direct there. Henceforth, pressurized by the might of her tremendous fisting, Reed's body was greatly pushed back. And whilst his figure was blown off, Emilia threw the twin swords she had created with both of her hands and the sword slashes drew an arc which was then cleared away by Reed's chopstick slash. Subsequently he collapsed onto the aisle, lying spread-eagled. Subaru, did they do it? Seeing the form of Reed collapsed, lying flat on the aisle, Subaru lightly whispered in astonishment, with whitened eyes. Blocking Emilia's surprise attack had been a final desperate tactic of his, and the one other than that, Ram's attacks, was what he had gotten a taste of. Every blow had wielded enough power to make his bones creak. Emilia's difficult fighting was a matter of course, but perhaps misjudging Ram's combat power had been Reed's cause of defeat. As an effective Sr. Leonis, having been able to move without any hindrances, Ram's ability had been enough to mow down the opponent's consciousness before Reed could get serious. Subaru, Huck. Right now you can quickly tie him down and render him unable to battle. Emilia-chan. Constrict him with ice. For a moment his thoughts had come to a halt without confirming their victory, but he was unable to overlook that extremely valuable situation. Panicking, Subaru instructed Emilia to constrict Reed. At the same pace, he tried to call out to Ram, who had been making strenuous efforts. Beatrice, Subaru, when did your health come back? Subaru, eh? Suddenly, so asked Beatrice, who had been supporting his body. Receiving that doubt, Subaru tardily came to notice the truth of him standing on his legs and giving instructions to Emilia. The agony which was eating into him as if a curse had disappeared. Ram, phew. The moment immediately after he judged what that must mean, Ram's body shivered, trembling violently. Ram's upper body, who had turned her back towards the side, jolted and she collapsed down to her knees, unable to support her body. Subaru, Ram. Julius, Kook. Unable to even stretch out her hand, Ram collapsed seemingly like a puppet whose threads had been slashed away. The one to jump at Ram's collapsing body was Julius, who had been awaiting an interval to plunge into the battle. Supporting Ram's wholly exhausted body, Julius confirmed her condition with his expression frozen. The reason for that was Ram's complexion, and the crimson of thick blood which dyed her clothes. Massive amounts of blood was flowing from the wound in Ram's abdomen whose bleeding she had stopped. Though it was true that the lost blood brought serious danger to her life, that alone was not the issue. The greatest problem was linked with the healing of Subaru's condition. In other words, Subaru, the effect of Cor Leonis, has been cut off. Ah, so it finally got cut. You, don't be doing boring shit. Aren't ya just hiding behind a woman? You're a disgrace for a young fish, you. In front of Subaru, who had been rendered speechless, the collapsed Reed swung and stationed both of his feet and vigorously stood up. Reed lightly patted and swept his back, and swung his arms in circles from his shoulders whilst gripping onto the chopsticks. His attitude, which felt as if he hadn't taken any of the damage Ram had inflicted on him, though that alone made his body shudder. What made Subaru uneasy were his words immediately afterwards. Reed said that it got cut. Just, what was he referring to? Reed, playin' round like that'll always be boring. First of all, something like feelin' no pain or ache even when the guts all torn up. Are you making fun of me, you? Subaru, Reed, if you say you wanna do it with perfection, then you gotta stand what you receive too. But, this one's done for. You, this one's done for, you know. You, can't you see? This woman was gonna die even before it got cut. Intimidated by Reed's low-pitched words, Subaru turned his line of sight towards Ram, who was in Julius' arms. Receiving that gaze, Julius lightly pulled in his chin. Julius, his words are correct. Miss Ram's wounds are no trivial matter. Even now, she is on the verge of death. Subaru, Huck. Julius, the reason why the bleeding is not stopping is perhaps because of the usage of a chemical which hinders the clotting of blood. Other than that must be the recoil of her pushing herself which is present on her body. Each and every word of Julius' analysis attempted to carve a painful fissure onto Subaru's chest. He failed. Subaru Leonis overlapped with his complacent failure. Taking over Ram's inferior physical form, he had created a circumstance under which she could fight. Though that was not a mistake in judgment, he ignored the injury she had taken. No, having Rem herself ignore those is what had been a mistake. If Subaru was to take over the pain and anguish of injuries, she would not be able to be conscious of the wound's seriousness. If Ram were to conduct herself in a way suggesting she was unharmed, Emilia would not come to notice anything either. Julius, a magic similar to negative sharing sensations, a bit different from that, or perhaps something entirely unlike. Something much more different, had been put to use. And, you said that you had cut it. Reed, I'm good at cuttin' invisible stuff, you see. Well, the trick's intuition. With that, a bit of time got used up. Took a pretty grand hit. Reed exaggerated the reason he had bathed in Ram's storm-like fists. However, returning to the original topic, the truth was that he could more or less not feel any of the damage he had taken. The trick behind that too, was pronounced from Julius' mouth. Whilst keeping Ram in his embrace, Julius gently turned his gaze backwards facing the aisle which had been fissured by the close combat. Julius, you let all of Miss Ram's attacks escape onto the floor with the bottom of your feet, huh? Reed, it's a technique which a woman friend of mine, Trisha, used to be good at, you see. Reed laughed with a caha as he firmly stomped on the aisle. Hearing the conversation of the two, Subaru, whilst continuing to shiver, glanced at the crevices of the aisle. The endless wounds borne onto the aisle were the proof of Reed having directed Ram's attacks onto the aisle. It was perhaps some technique to direct the impact of blows towards someplace else. It could be said that it was the culmination of martial arts. Subaru, ah. The truth is, when Ram's initial blow had struck, Subaru too had witnessed the aisle tremendously fissure with his own eyes. That also applied to all subsequent consecutive strikes. Both this and that, everything was. Subaru, to slash down the connection between me and Ram. In the first place, how did that even? Reed, I just said. I slash down what I want to slash down, live where I want to live, and sleep with women I want to sleep with. I slash down that boring game, all while hummin' but. Leading a carefree life, was Reed. Cutting things which could not be seen. Otherwise, cutting connections which do not physically exist. Was the capability of doing so, the true ability of the existence named the Sword Saint? Emilia, but, when I struck you from above with a lot of strength, you had been in pain. Reed, back then the situation was different, you know, fiercely frizzlin'. Right now I'm here to enjoy the fightin' more than the trial. If it's a fight then you gotta be more serious than the trial, you know. Do you disagree, you? Slashing and repelling away Emilia's response, Reed snorted his nose and prepared his chopsticks. Adjusting the stance of his chopsticks as if he was ordinarily commencing a meal, and pointing their ends towards Julius, Reed's blue eyes gleamed with a blaze. Reed, that's how it is. You got what I'm sayin', you. Hey you. Julius, to settle this, with the sword. That is your intention, correct? Reed, yeah, that's right. Let me tell ya, I'll allow any damn thing aside from swords too, you know? Whether you wanna throw magic at me or clash with me, it ain't any problem. If you wanna win against me. Quite boldly, Reed gestured with a finger touching his chest and pointed towards his heart. In other words, that was the only way to bring an end to his life, that is what his expression indicated. That was the evidence that Subaru's card of waging war had been correct. Julius, why must you be fixated over myself? Reed, I'm being fixated over you? Gimme a break. Bastards of just mere words with nice faces re the race I hate the most, ain't that so? On top of that, why'd I gotta be fixated? Julius, then. Reed, you're the one who'd have a reason to be fixated over me. If I draw back from here, do you really think that'd be fine? Reed's response to Julius' question could not be described as one that was clear. He himself belonged to a race of those types who did deem worth in conveying all things as words. Furthermore, a large part of his response had been occupied by something similar to sensation. It was difficult to comprehend. However, for those who did understand that, merely had the answer which was limited to that was. Read, tch. A troublesome one ended up comin' here. Before that answer could be chewed, what preceded was Reed clicking his tongue in discontent. And, the cause behind the click of his tongue, revealed its figure from the interior of the aisle. Subaru and the others had crossed through. No, in the form of a corona, it pounced upon them. Amelia, Subaru. Immediately before the corona could evaporate away Subaru, Amelia's ice sword separated and distanced away the two from each other. As a note of shattering of ice echoed, the repelled light stabbed through the aisle. An extremely long tail stinger disappeared as if having frayed. That was namely, the baptism by the guardian of the Sage's watchtower. Subaru, Shala. Red compound eyes emerged from the interior of the aisle, possessing multiple legs. The titanic scorpion revealed its form. Jet black shell and fiendishly large pincers, its figure was both ominous and healthy. However, the form of Lei, who had been left behind to battle the titanic scorpion, was nowhere around it. Although the titanic scorpion had no traces of blood on itself, if he had faced defeat at the hands of the titanic scorpion and had fallen, then it was all good, but Subaru, Reed and Shala, at the same time. Beatrice, S. Subaru. Caught between the two formidable enemies, in the midst of the situation where they could not take any inadvertent action, Beatrice called out to Subaru with a trembling voice. Looking back towards that Beatrice, he noticed her pale expression. Beatrice's expression was painted with fear, and he tightly hugged it with his chest. Somehow or the other, he searched for words in an attempt to clear away the unrest in her heart. Subaru, Beatrice, it's all right. At any rate, we haven't managed to find a plan yet, but it's all right. Recovery is still. Beatrice, that's not it, I suppose, that's not it, in fact. It is coming, I suppose. Subaru, it's coming? As he heard Beatrice's concerns, who had widened her eyes and changed her expression, he glanced at the titanic scorpion once again. Reed was here, and Shala was on the other side. This was the very meaning of threat. In a situation where such terrifying ones had gathered, what was going to come now? Subaru, it can't be. Reed, I just said, didn't I? That a troublesome one ended up comin' here. The thought which had passed by Subaru's mind, as if affirming it, Reed pronounced. That tone of speaking was serious, as if it were having trouble digesting this situation. The subsequent instant, an impact reached their feet in the form of a parlous earthquake, jolting Pleiades' watchtower. Without exaggerating, when Subaru felt the impact reach his body, heaven and earth got overturned for him. Subaru was blown off without even the use of a technique. In the field of vision of that Subaru, the residents of the fantasy world were each displaying astonishing movements respectively. Midair, Amelia kicked the foothold she had created with ice and repelled away the consecutively fired tail stringers by the titanic scorpion, seemingly advancing towards her comrades. No, towards Subaru. In the world which was tilting diagonally, Julius seemingly dashed on the wall and closed in on Reed, and commenced with an elite sword slash with his night sword. And Beatrice jumped towards Subaru, who had tightly held onto Ram and kept her close to himself. Beatrice, Nurak. The moment she chanted that, Subaru felt himself enveloped within the feeling of suspension, different from that of the impact. Released from the force of gravity, the feeling as if he had been thrown into a world without gravity. The effect was not as little as simply having restored heaven and earth for him. Each one respectively was acting at their very best with whatever each one of them respectively could do. Subaru, ah. As if sneering at those very best of actions, multitudinous volumes of the jet black shadow swallowed the tower in its entirety. Dreadful pressure echoed, and the watchtower, which boasted strength enough to make it difficult to believe that it was mere stone, got completely crushed. That was the tyranny of the shadow, which was not originally supposed to possess mass. The arrival of the impact, which could no longer be named as a single destructive happening but rather was closer to a natural disaster, easily swallowed, chewed even those who possessed extraordinary abilities enough to be called superhumans in this world. Going up against the titanic scorpion, making free use of magic and her physical abilities and putting up a brave fight, Amelia, as well. Swinging the night sword, and charging towards the legend who was entertained by his self, Julius, as well. Protecting Subaru, and using magic with her small body, Beatrice, as well. In the juncture where they twinkled aglow, the stretching shadow entwined and they turned invisible. Without sound, without reverberation, the forms of Amelia and the others vanished. What name should be given to what had occurred to their bodies in the matter of an instant, Subaru was unable to find any pertinent words within himself. Merely, there existed something he could clearly say. I have failed. I love you. At the same time, he accepted reality, and was whispered words of dusky love. Whilst being whispered into his ears, or otherwise, whilst kissing him, or otherwise, whilst embracing his entire body, or otherwise, whilst caressing his soul, frighteningly direct, words with the soul of love. He immediately understood the greatest problem amongst the 5 obstacles. The shadow which swallowed everything had arrived, whether it was possible to deal with it at all, even that notion alone was questionable. This was his 3rd time seeing that shadow, and each time he encountered it, Subaru's life had been lost. This time was no exception, now that the shadow had arrived and reached Thruff. "Reed, you, the hell you doin' thinkin' 'bout sleepin', hey?" At that moment, the jet black shadow which enclosed Subaru was mowed down by a flash that had been swung. "Subaru, you've got to be joking. Reed, widen your eyes and see. What's the joke, you? You, do ya have your eyes open? Open your eyes and take a good look, you. What's the joke 'bout me?" Saying that whilst casually swinging the night sword, and having slashed away the shadow was Reed. He wielded in his hands, not chopsticks, but a night sword which belonged to Julius, and exhaled through his nose. It was truly ironic that the sword which had lost its owner, was displaying more ability in the hands of the sword saint than its owner, but there was no time present to be having such thoughts. That was because Subaru, who had been standing upright, had his torso kicked by Reed. Subaru, goo, egg. Inside the narrow aisle, his suspended body was unable to hit even the ceiling or the walls. The structure of the watchtower had already been destroyed, and he no longer was able to determine where the ceiling was or where the walls were. What was present in Subaru's environs was the endlessly black sky, endlessly black soul, endlessly black world. Anything and everything became incomprehensible. No, there was slightly moving heat within his arms. Ram, ugh. The warm body of the unconscious, fainted Ram asserted her existence. Subaru, huck. Directing strength in his molars, biting and tearing into his own lips, he directed life into himself. At this moment, when anything and everything was being painted black, by giving up on comprehend the situation, wasn't Subaru simply entrusting his body to the end? In front of this life trying its best to live at this moment, that was unforgivable. Subaru, still, something. Though the situation was in this state, there yet must be something he could attain. Till now, Subaru had been swallowed by this jet black evil influence and had lost his life twice. However, those 2 occasions had been abrupt, and he must have had no time left to do this. What he had attained through this was Ram, who was asserting her fragile life, and Reed, ha! The kick he had received by Reed, who was within the same shadow as Subaru, wearing a ferocious smile. Of course, he was not grateful for that. It hurt as if the pit of his stomach had been gouged out, and in the first place, the reason why they had lacked time till the shadow swallowed the watchtower was because of Reed's unnecessary interruption. That's why. Subaru, you will get crushed too. By the greatest knight I know of. Reed, that's you, keep acting cool as how you're till the very end, young fish. Looking downward, Reed set his aim on Subaru with a backhand grip to the night sword. There was distance between them, but from Reed's perspective, distance of a few meters must be as good as non-existent. And, below Reed, who had established Subaru as his enemy, the vivacious jet black shadow yet continued advancing closer. Something like that wasn't even deemed to be anything by Reed's sword spirit. Though he was unaware of it, at this moment, Subaru may just be witnessing it. A long time ago, said to have happened 400 years ago, the legendary acts of the witch and the sword saint. However, something like that was meager as the absurd destruction and violence, namely death, drew close to Subaru. Subaru, at least. Even if just a second longer, I want you to stay alive. Enshrouded by that wish, Subaru tightly embraced Ram's body in his arms. The next moment, a torrent of light, unbelievably stemming from a sword, swallowed Subaru. Hook. Each time he vanished, each time he redid, each time he made a wish, he was faced with vicissitude. Countless times, repeating, he continued to pile up ends which are supposed to happen only once. Suddenly, he thought. Always, having someone by his side in the moments of end, may be something to feel happy for. Should never being alone in the moments of end, grant him the strength to stand. However, alongside, he also thought of this. About why, always, Natsuki Subaru was unable to rescue that someone whom he nestled close to, in the moments of end. Clouds of sand were rising up to extremely high skies which they were never supposed to reach. Pleiades Watchtower's balcony, several meters above ground, underneath where present were the advancing hordes of witch beasts, commencing with their attack to bring down the watchtower. Holding them back, with her own ability to control witch beasts, was Melee, making strenuous efforts. Julius was above, heading for Reed on the second layer. And Subaru and the others must make haste and dash to Amelia and the others, who must be clashing with Laybat and Kato's. Master Sama? Are you all right? In accordance with Subaru's summons, she tilted her neck, with her long, black braid swaying about. As she pronounced that question, in her expression, in her eyes, sentiments such as those of impatience or irritation could not be felt. Of course, no light of cunningness planning to deceive them could be perceived either. Whether that was her camouflage or her true intents, there was no definite answer to that, however. Master Sama, are you listening? People other than Master Sama or me seem to have gotten involved in troublesome stuff, but... Is there something I can do for Master Sama? Subaru, is that so? Something you can do for me, huh? Yup. If it's Master Sama's request, then into fire, into water, even into large explosions, I can energetically flyway into M. Energetically, possessing no malice, the personality with her arms stretched wide while saying that, Shala. Staring at that carefree smile, Subaru turned back and inhaled. He made his return. To this moment, he was made to return. There were no changes in what he was supposed to do. There existed people he must save, people he must defeat. That is why, without losing his way, in order to settle what all he was supposed to do, Subaru undertook a necessary ceremony. That was... Subaru, Shala, will you listen to anything I tell you to do? Shala, course of. If it's Master Sama's request, then I'll listen to anything. If it's Master Sama's demand, then I'll even listen to something which may be a bit extreme. Could it be Master Sama finally reached the limit of holding back in front of my dynamite body? That's why you kept away all others and it's just the two of us now? You. Geez, Master Sama. Subaru, Shala. Twisting and turning, with her cheeks sandwiched in her hands, Shala blushed at Subaru's words. However, Subaru did not pay heed to such words of hers, and stared at her face with a serious face. And... Subaru, if I tell you to die, will you die? Chapter 70, The Earnest Star. Within the collapsing tower, asking in Reed's decapitating slash, Natsuki Subaru's life had burned out. Quite literally, burning out had accurately been his moment of death. There were various things which he was pained by and which he needed to confirm, such as the way to cope with the mass of the shadow drawing near, or what he intended to do afterwards, and above all, somehow or other confirming a scaffold within the crumbling tower, and all those of his efforts had gotten abandoned. What alone was confirmed was that Reed's final flash had swallowed Subaru, and vaporized him away. Perhaps it had not hurt, is what he thought. Of course, he did not believe it had been Reed's benevolence at all, but pain and fear not accompanying the moment of death was an unexpected occurrence for Subaru, who had died several times within a short frame of time. Yes, neither had he felt pain nor fear. Merely rage was what he held. Subaru, I will. For just how many times continue to pile up meaningless deaths, is what he thought. Things he had taken with him, hints that would break him out of the deadlock, as long as those were present, Subaru's deaths would not be meaningless, and the debts he was continuing to pile up would not be put to waste. That was terrible deceit. That was merely an excuse to turn his eyes away from his own powerlessness. He had died meaninglessly, powerlessly, without will, without heart, aimlessly, and he did not want to think that that was all there was to it. That is why, for not having merely died, he desired meaning in his death. If only he could have had been more strong. If only he could have had been more smart. If only, instead of his current self, he could have had been stronger, smarter, bolder. Subaru, but... The only one here was merely the weak, stupid, pathetic Natsuki Subaru. Because nobody, ever, tried to leave that Subaru alone. That was, because they were supporting his current self's wound-filled resolution. Subaru, that is why, I am. That is why, Natsuki Subaru is. Hook. Subaru, if I tell you to die, will you die? The moment he declared that, it was not as if he felt no hesitation. That was because he had been unable to anticipate what kind of a reaction his opponent would give him the moment she received that question. No, if it was merely anticipation, then he had done so. With various patterns of imagination, he had thought of what it eventually would be. If so, then the faltering he had embraced while declaring that question, for what reason did he possess that indecision? At any rate, Shala? If Master Sama told me to die, then I'll die, you know? He felt his chest ache upon Shala's indifferent response, who had a finger touching her cheek. As if he was being stabbed, to the point it would form cracks, painfully, he let out a shriek within the core of his chest. Oozily, upon the painful optical illusion, Subaru gripped to the pit of his stomach and deeply exhaled. Though he himself had voiced out those wounding words just now, he thought himself comical for feeling hurt. Looking at that Subaru's state, Shala rounded her eyes in curiosity. With no ill intent, Shala's attitude seemed as if she had been asked about the menu for today's evening meal and she had merely responded appropriately. That reaction of hers was the second worst in the patterns he had predicted. With no pretense, selecting the option of accepting the instruction for her to abandon her life was Shala. That was no lie or humor, that was her real intention with no second thoughts. He was able to understand that by a single glance into her straightforward eyes. Subsequently, having caught a glimpse into her dark self-interests or plans might have had saved Subaru's heart. However, the reality was that Subaru had not prepared for such an escape route. Whether that was compassion or mercilessness, at this stage he would not be able to even differentiate between the two, but... Subaru, is that so? Shala, does Master Sama want me to die? If it's Master Sama's request, then I'll listen to anything, and I'm perfectly fine with it personally, but again, isn't it quite a weird timing for such a thought? Right now, it's a total fiasco inside the tower. Subaru, I know. Hearing Subaru's husky reply, Shala tilted her neck while having her finger remain on her cheek. Going along with that movement of her neck, her long braid scorpion tail swayed about. Scorpion tail. If considered, that was quite an ironic naming as well. Similar to Shala, which bestowed meaning upon the Scorpius, her name was expressed even upon her body. That was made apparent not merely through her name, but through various other aspects of hers as well. That was surely because she had no intentions of concealing it. That is why. Subaru, Shala, aren't you capable of taking the form of a large scorpion? Lacking any sluggish phraseology, Subaru frankly cut into the opponent's secret. The 5 obstacles that attacked the Pleiades watchtower, one of those, the existence of the jet-black Titanic scorpion. Subaru had been halfway convinced that it had been Shala. However, for Subaru, that answer he had sensed was merely his interpretation of the feeling he got from the powerful authority of unidentified nature, Earnest. If he were to try and gain confirmation for that answer he had sensed, inquiring the opponent directly about it would be the fastest. Of course, if he had time to then, he may have chosen a different option as well, and if he had been unable to trust his opponent's response, then he might have been obligated to employ a different method. However, Shala kept her neck tilted at that inquiry of Subaru's. Shala, take the form of, the nuance is a bit different from that, but yup, I can. But it damages my prettiness, so I don't really like it too much. I just think that the design given to me by Mother Sama and Master Sama is the best. In spite of the question being one lacking any chain of logic, Shala readily answered with no hesitation yet again. She possessed no intentions of hiding anything. And the nature of Shala herself, it could be said that it had been established with this proof. At the same time, the Titanic scorpion which made its appearance in the tower, its true identity had been her. He had gained that confirmation now. The effect of Earnest, the moment he perceived the positions of his comrades within the tower, the reason why the Titanic scorpion had been indicated in that perception, that had indeed been the trick instigating it. Shala, Master Sama? Are you okay? Your face has a pretty bad color, you know? Would you like to refresh yourself with my lap pillow, arm pillow, chest pillow, hug pillow, or something like that? Subaru, don't say things which dampen my spirits. First of all, we don't have such time, you yourself said that, didn't you? Shala, it's true that it's a fiasco inside the tower, but for me, Master Sama is on the top of my priority list, everything else can be kept for later. That's why, if Master Sama slips into confusion and says he wants to be locked in a grapple with me, I'd welcome it super openly. I'm getting fired up. Subaru, don't get fired up. Get some water. Shala, just as always, geez Master Sama. Sharpening her lips, Shala made a pouting face. His back and forth with her, along with her expression, if only these were to be taken into consideration, it could be misunderstood that the situation that had come up around Subaru and the others was seemingly one of peace. However, reality was not kind to Subaru and the others at all. It was the farthest thing from peace. While Subaru and Shala leisurely conversed like this, Emilia and Ram were making efforts in order to hold off gluttony, and Beatrice had joined in with them for support. Julius was colliding with Reed equals Roy on the second layer, Echidna had grouped with Patrash, and must be evacuating to Teigida along with Rem. And Melee was holding off the hordes of witch beasts, the very best they could do to strike the 5 obstacles. However, even that was merely deceit for the sake of conversing with Shala. Because, in these surroundings, Natsuki Subaru was. Shala, and Master Sama? Are you seriously alright? If you stare at me with such imposing eyes, I won't be able to hold back this 400-year-old weight I have experienced, you know. At Subaru's gaze staring at herself, Shala hugged her slender figure with her arms. It seemed to be the usual feign, but that was not it. She truly was in a situation where she was feeling uneasiness by Subaru's attitude. It was unlike her. No, that's wrong. Perhaps these were her true feelings. She had not felt shaken even when Subaru had told her to die, but when Subaru acted abnormally, her fragile heart had shaken up, almost astonishingly. Akin to a baby bird innocently yearning for its parents. When he had fired his first question at Shala, Subaru had thought of several possibilities. Amongst those, the worst one was that the instant she would get struck by those heartless words from Subaru, she might murder him impulsively at the very same pace. In the case that Shala's attitude till now had been mere acting, and anything and everything had been fabricated. It was not impossible. Though he had possessed no confirmation before that question, she had a track record of having changed into the form of the Titanic Scorpion and murdering Subaru, Echidna, and Beatrice. Otherwise, in the tragedy where Subaru had been unable to find a single person alive in his surroundings, it was highly possible that she had a hand in that after turning into the Titanic Scorpion. That is why, the first question, for Subaru as well, had been a gamble. Once he said that, the instant immediately afterwards Shala had gulped down that question, it would not have been strange if Subaru's head had been sent evaporating. It had been that kind of a gamble he could now say that he had won that gamble. However, nearly once is never an end to gambling. The debts Subaru had unconsciously piled up, the stakes prepared by gluttony and the Pleiades watchtower, in order to regain whatever he had lost till now, piling up such little victories would be far too lacking. For a huge victory, it is a necessity to make a huge gamble. Henceforth, Subaru, Shala, sorry for having so many questions, but I want to ask something. From what I've heard, there are supposed to be some rules for the trials of this Pleiades watchtower, is that so? Shala, you ask that now at this timing when I'm getting all hot. Well, yes there are. I had talked about it before Master Sama crashed his head into the urinal too, though. Subaru, tell me about them. Without hiding her sulking attitude, Shala gently positioned her fingers opposite to her chest. And she immediately swayed about her positioned fingers, whispering them. Shala, first, it is forbidden to leave without completing the trials. Second, it is forbidden to violate the rules of the trials. Third, it is forbidden to disrespect the libraries. Fourth, it is forbidden to do anything which causes destruction to the tower itself. Yeah. Whilst keeping her fingers folded, Shala explained with an awfully fluent tone. Of course, she was a girl proficient in speaking if she were to limit her thoughtless comments, and nothing felt odd in her explanation, which was lacking any pauses. Though nothing felt odd, there was a catch to it. That went for the serious tone of her voice, which was unlike her. At but the end of her gesture of counting with fingers, she had touched her final finger and then stopped there, that too. Subaru, the fifth one? Shala, that's not there. Master Sama, didn't you hear me? I must have said up to 4. Master Sama, can't you even count numbers now? That won't do. Numbers aren't my strong point either, but even I can count that much. Subaru, Shala. Staring, Subaru raised his voice and took a single step, shortening the distance between him and Shala. Those two had been facing each other head-on beforehand, but the distance between them now was enough that one could extend his hand and grasp onto the other one. Even that action was a gamble for Subaru. Of course, just because he had opened up the distance between them being only of a single arm, just because he had shortened the distance between them to that of only a single arm, the war potential of having the capability of doing something which belonged to both of them was nothing so superficial. Shala, Master Sama. Could it be, you're toying with my heart? Not my will, but Master Sama getting closer on his will. If you want me to open my mouth, then, it's that. At the same pace and with the same energy, hug me and melt me. Subaru, if your mouth really will open by that, then I'll do it. That can even be said to be a side benefit. But, if what you believe is my purpose based on your intuition isn't actually my purpose, then that won't be the case, I think. Subaru, Shala, I shall ask again. What is the fifth rule of the tower? While accepting Shala's mild refusal, Subaru asked for the second time. That was an action not inching closer to her physically, but instead stepping onto her heart. Those repeated words, although perhaps bitter, were something she could not make it seem as if she did not hear them. Embracing that resolution, in front of Subaru who had clenched his fists, Shala slightly exhaled, and Shala, NG. Subaru, NG. Rotating her neck right and left, Shala crossed her arms in front of her voluptuous chest, making a symbol of her discomfort. Though her behavior was childish, her eyes were far beyond seriousness. Intently staring at Subaru, who was standing at a precarious spot, Shala's eyes had been filled with heavy emotions. Those quiet, yet boundlessly deep, heavy emotions, which should be named as an appeal, were brittle and ephemeral. With unwillingness, she once again rotated her neck right and left. Shala, NG. No, I don't want to talk about it. The fifth rule? Does something like that even matter? In my and Master Sama's honeymoon, it has nothing to. Subaru, as if it has nothing to do. I am, and everyone is challenging the trials of this tower. I can't be as optimistic as to think it'll all be fine without even knowing the trials rules. That's why, Shala. Shala, I'd rather not. Subaru, Shala. Like a disobedient child, Shala covered her ears and averted her eyes. At that attitude of Shala's, Subaru declared with a strong tone. Subaru, you must be having your own duties in this tower. The tower's starkeeper. You must have been doing that all this time, right? I don't know if it's true or not, but for 400 years. Then. Shala, it has been 4 days. Subaru, ah. The spilled voice, as if a whisper, shortly halted Subaru's thoughts. The years Subaru was questioning, and the time frame too short to even be comparable. Surely, her statements had been lies, and the time Shala had spent in the tower had always been short. Something like that was not possible. While retaining possession of the heavy emotions in her eyes, Shala, with her lips shivering, continued. Shala, it's been only 4 days since Master Sama has come to the tower. Within those, as Master Sama was in bed for 2 days, that makes only 2 days since Master Sama and I have met with each other, spoken to each other, have been side by side with each other. Even though I've waited for even 400 years. It's been only 2 days. Subaru, Shala. Shala, I thought just a single moment, a single glimpse, would be fine. Covering her eyes, Shala immediately ceased to have her gaze slumped downwards. Seemingly, as if she were saying she regretted to have Subaru out of her field of vision for even a single moment. No, upon considering, that was indeed the case. As far back as Subaru could recall, Shala had been in the same space, at the same time with Subaru, always watching Subaru. That was not for a shallow purpose like surveillancing Subaru with minimal effort, but certainly. Shala, 400 years, I waited for Master Sama in the tower. I thought I would be satisfied with a single glimpse. But that wasn't the truth. Shala, Master Sama is my everything, after all. Master Sama's everything, and all of my feelings for Master Sama are what make me. The 400 years it took, I can't convey them to Master Sama. All of it, in just 2 days. I can't come to terms with that. Subaru, that's why you won't tell me the 5th rule? Acute emotions enfolded the entirety of Shala's body, and molded the existence known as her. 400 years, the weight of those words he had perceived through mere appearance of words, finally became an actual time frame for Subaru, and he stood at a disposition where he could feel that. After all, her attitude had been too casual to speak of 400 years. He thought that perhaps there existed no instrument in her to embrace feelings such as hardship, sadness. Perhaps she was inhuman like that scorpion, down to her very heart, down to her very soul. Shala, I don't want to talk about the rules. After all, if I talk about that, if I talk about that, Master Sama will notice the way they clear the trials. That's why, if I talk about that, if I end up talking about that, my time with Master Sama will end. Pointedly, Shala hugged her body and expressed her own true feelings to Subaru. As if vomiting blood, no, as if restraining herself from crying, that tone of her voice stabbed through Subaru's heart. It was a reply he had not anticipated. Just as his initial question, Subaru had thought of some patterns regarding the answer to this question. The true motives behind Shala hiding the rules of Pleiades' watchtower. If she had colluded with the person who created the rules of this nasty tower, she had certain plans as well, is what he thought. Otherwise, unrelated to such dark plans, the reason why she had not spoken about the rules was on a simple whim or had slipped out of her mind, and that may not hold any significance. He had thought that as well. But neither was the truth. Shala did have a reason as to why she did not want to speak of the tower's rules. And that reason was unrelated to the ideas of the sage or whoever who created the tower, but rather an earnest wish. 400 years, having lived that time in solitude, and had continued to await the reunion with the person she was waiting for, was Shala. That had come true, she had gained happiness, and that is why she wished for that time to last longer, even slightly. If it was for the sake of fulfilling that modest desire. Shala, Master Sama, will you hate me, who lied to you? Shala, hating me, not even wanting to see my face. Will you be like that? For what reason was she making a face much more pained than when told something like will you die? For what reason did she view being hated by him to be more crucial than losing her life? For what reason did she think of everything like a goal, despite waiting for 400 years? Subaru, I won't hate you or anything. Subaru, because you kept quiet. I do think I probably had to face really hard situations, and sometimes I honestly thought I'd never been cornered this badly. Facing the silent Shala, Subaru spoke his mind. There were no lies here. Those were his true feelings. Because Shala hid information as per her true intentions, Subaru had been unable to make crucial investigations and had to repeatedly face mercilessly cruel deaths. Not just Subaru. Aside from Subaru, Emilia and Beatrice had to, as well. He could never forget the despair, discontentment, and hopelessness he felt during those moments. That is why, if there were to be an existence who were the originator of all of that evil, Subaru would certainly never be able to forgive them, is what he believed. Then, at this instant, in front of Shala like this, was he going to do the same? Subaru, no. He did not think of Shala, she, who had lived 400 years in solitude, she, who had fulfilled the meaning of her being born in mere 2 days and was satisfied such that she gained happiness, to be the originator of that evil. If there were to be an originator of that evil, it would be the unfairness of this world itself, and the one who created the circumstances where it was impossible to do anything about that, the Master Sama who commanded Shala for 400 years. Shala, ah. Suddenly, a hoarse exhale leaked out of Shala's lips. Subaru, Shala? Shala, ah, ah. Ah, ah. Feeling abnormality in Shala's condition in front of his eyes, Subaru called out her name. However, Shala, without responding to Subaru's call, concealed her face with her palms. A painfully trembling voice, unbefitting her, could be heard from that throat. Shala, no, good. No good. Master Sama. Master Sama, Master Sama, Master Sama, Master Sama. Subaru, Shala. Shala, what happened? So suddenly. Shala, somebody violated the rules. Rushing over, as Subaru jolted her white shoulders, his arms got grasped instead. And, while painfully gripping to Subaru's arms with her slender ones, Shala spoke. Gazing intently into Shala's eyes, who had said that, Subaru inhaled. A queer change was occurring in the dark pupils and irises of Shala's eyes. Within her spherical eyes, the dark pupil and iris of her eyeball split into 3, turning red and pulsating. The transfiguration which occurred in the right and left eyeballs alongside, it meant that her dark pupils and irises split into 6. 6 compound eyes, 3 on the left, 3 on the right. Shala, Master Sama. Right now, I can still make it. Subaru, make it? Shala, right now, if Master Sama commands me, then I can. I can, still kill myself. With her eyeballs pulsating red, white steam started to arise from the entirety of Shala's body. Her white skin got engulfed with a tint of red, and even Subaru, who was standing right next to her, could feel the abnormal rise in body temperature. The principle behind it was ambiguous. Just that Shala's body was generating heat, and change was ensuing in it. Perhaps, it was the initial phase of transforming into the form of the titanic scorpion. Shala, if I transform, I won't make it. I will become a killing machine lacking any blood or tears, and kill Master Sama. I mean, I want Master Sama so much. I want Master Sama so badly that I can't bear it, that's why. Subaru, before that happens. Shala, please tell me, to die. If you do that, I will, for Master Sama. Will come to an end before killing you. Shala was unable to continue her words on to say that. In place of words, her eyes, her shivering voice, her entire body and soul, were conveying the same. An incomparable dread welled up in Subaru's body as well. That was, surely, the instinctive reaction of a human faced with otherworldly fear. The human known as Natsuki Subaru was being frightened by the monster known as Shala, who was in front of him. That is why, Subaru was. Subaru, Shala, tell me the 5th rule. Shala, Master Sama, this is not the time for. Subaru, if you tell that to me. Subaru interrupted the words of the appealing Shala with a loud voice. At that menacing glare, Shala's shoulders shivered. He grabbed those shivering shoulders. They were warm. Such that his palm could melt. Shala's body temperature had already risen to the level of a fire. However, he did not let his hands go. Right now, he did not release her body, burning and scorching. Subaru, if you tell that to me, I'll command you. Stay calm. Before you turn into a monster, I'll command you. Hearing Subaru say that straightforwardly, Shala widened her eyes. She then called out to Subaru, saying Master Sama. Shala, Master Sama, such a womanizer. Subaru, I don't remember being one. Shala, then, Master Sama is a Shalaizer. My favorite kind of izer. Smiling weakly, Shala softly overlapped the hands grasping her shoulders with her own hands. And Shala, 5th, it is not forbidden to destroy the trials. Shala, look, the color of my eyes has changed. At my beloved, Master Sama. Saying that, Shala thrusted away Subaru's chest. At that greater than expected might, Subaru was thrown back, unable to keep his grip onto her shoulders. When he looked towards the front while lightly coughing, Shala, while hugging her own body, crouched down. Shala, hook! Red steam, like the color of blood, ascended from the entirety of her body. The steam had changed its color, it was a sign of danger. Shala's eyes lost its dark pupils and irises as well, and before one could notice, turned bright red. Shala, Master Sama. Hurry! Before I lose myself. Shala, please tell me. To die, Hook. If Master Sama says that, I will. With the same mouth which had argued being against Subaru and the others completing the trials and leaving the tower, Shala, using up her life, indicated the path where she could remain without killing Subaru and the others. No, Subaru. Hearing the desperate voice of Shala's, Subaru inhaled. And then... Subaru, Shala. Shala, Master Sama. Subaru, my bad. What I said just now was a lie. Shala, eh? At Subaru's informing words, Shala rounded her eyes. Watching Shala's reaction for himself, Subaru halted his breath, and at the same pace, leapt backwards. Having been pushed away by Shala had been a blessing for him amidst all this misfortune. Had Shala kept his wrists grabbed, he would have never been able to perform this act. Subaru's body crossed over the narrow open-air veranda of the balcony, and was launched into the air. Shala, Shala's instantaneous voice got engulfed in the vehement sandgusts and was rendered inaudible. At the same pace, Subaru's body, without any support, fell non-stop for several hundreds of meters. Falling down, he possessed no plans to save himself. He had not prepared any plans to save himself. What Subaru had done was purely throw himself to death. He did not desire to do this at all, nor did he want to speak of it, but this was his intention from the very beginning. If these surroundings, these actions, could be excused, he intended to surely do this. That is because Subaru could then trust his choice without any indecision. After all, Shala, Master Sama. Similarly, jumping out from the balcony herself as well, Shala chased after Subaru. Widening those eyes, desperately stretching out her hand, Shala chased the falling Subaru, and leapt, trying not to take away, but save that life with her own hands. The true identity of the Titanic Scorpion was Shala. Shala purposefully hid the rules of the tower. Shala had repeatedly killed Subaru or his comrades, and stood in the way as the fifth obstacle. But Subaru, I just want to save you. He could never forget her form, she, who had endured her transformation against her own feelings, and had requested to be ordered to kill herself so that she does not kill Subaru, till the very end of the end. Though it was quite a nasty thing to say, he wanted to confirm that. Whom he should save, whom he should not save, whom he should defeat, whom he should protect, whom he should love. Because Natsuki Subaru believed he could not advance further unless he confirmed that. He will no longer perplex over whom he should love. Shala, Master Sama Aowaya. Shala's form, while she stretched out her hand and tried pursuing Subaru, changed mid-air. Her hand stretching out enlarged, and transformed into large pincers clad in a jet-black shell. Her white skin was covered with a rough shell, without leaving any trace behind, and her flesh body expanded, as if bursting open from the interior. For a single moment, the seemingly painful transformation, as if bursting open her blood and flesh, reached conclusion as if a tape being reversed, and finally, the immense ominous incongruity, the Titanic Scorpion, had achieved completion. And that Titanic Scorpion's tail's tip nimbly established its aim at Subaru. Perhaps, tail stingers similar to that white luster would be fired from there, and burn Subaru's life to nothing in an instant. The mid-air Subaru lacked any technique to avoid that. However, Subaru, I won't let myself be killed by you, because Shala would cry. The tail stinger was fired, but before that, arrived the terminus of his fall. The two of Subaru and the Titanic Scorpion came falling down above the hordes of witch beasts fiercely advancing onto the sand tower. The existence known as Natsuki Subaru did not have the ability to endure the several hundred meters long fall. Bursting open, his life was shed. However, on the verge of his life being shed, he said a few final words. Subaru, I will definitely help you. He got the meager time to convey the message to the sandy gusts, incomprehensible to the Titanic Scorpion. End of chapters 69 and 70, The Absurd Iron Hammer of the Sword.